James's mother sets an old photograph on Diep's kitchen table. Faded,
Do you
edges
recognize her?
worn. A young woman standing in front of a small house. Do you recognize her? Chico, James's mother asks. Diep stares. Her hands
The
start
letters
shaking.
mention a woman near Hate.
Something about the woman's
a
eyes
daughter.
feels familiar. I found this in my mother's things. Letters mentioned a woman near Hate, a woman who had a daughter.
I'm gonna tell you what happens
next
when
morning,
the past finally catches up.
James's mother leaves for
Here we go.
Hate to ask questions Diep has carried for 20 years. I'm going to tell you what happens when the past finally catches up. If stories like this mean something to you, I hope you'll stay. Here we go. Let me tell you about Diep. 20 years ago, her mother disappeared, just gone one day. Everyone told Diep she was dead, and eventually, Diep believed them. So she built a life anyway, got married to James, had a daughter named Nie, created this little world of safety and routine because that's what you do when the ground falls out from under you. You build new ground. And now, this week, something's threatening to crack that ground wide open because James came home a few days ago and said something that's been sitting in both their minds like a stone. What if we're related? I know. I had the same reaction. Related? What does that even mean? But here's what you need to understand. James's mother is going back to her hometown for Tet, the place called Hate, near Hanoi. And apparently, Diep's mother, the one who disappeared, might have been from somewhere around there too. James's father has been saying things, hinting at things, and James is terrified that when his mother goes back, she's going to find out something that changes everything. So that's what's hanging over this family right now. And today is Wednesday, the day before James's mother leaves. Around 10 in the morning, there's a knock at Diep's door. She knows who it is before she opens it. James's mother stands there with a cloth bag in her hands. She's dressed nicely, traveling clothes. Her face is composed, but there's something in her eyes, something Diep can't quite read. Miss Huyen, Diep says, please come in. I won't stay long. I just wanted to see Nie before I leave. Ixenai runs over, and James's mother scoops her up. They chat for a few minutes. Easy conversation about school, about Tet, about the ban chung Diep made the other day. Then James's mother sets Nie down and looks at Diep. Can we talk? Just for a minute? Diep's stomach drops. Of course. Nie, go play in your room for a bit. But, go on. Hakdinini leaves, the dog trailing behind her. The two women sit at the kitchen table. James's mother doesn't speak right away. She opens her bag and pulls out an old photograph. Faded, edges worn. She sets it on the table between them. Diep looks down. It's a woman, young, maybe early 20s, standing in front of a small house. She's smiling, but it's a careful smile. Diep's breath catches. Oh, do you recognize her? James's mother asks quietly. Diep shakes her head, but her hands are trembling. I found this in my mother's things after she passed. James's mother continues. It was in a box with some letters. I didn't think much of it at the time. But recently, your husband asked me some questions about Hate, about people who lived there. Diep can't take her eyes off the photograph. Something about the woman's eyes. Something about the way she's standing. It feels familiar in a way Diep can't explain. What's her name? So she whispers. I don't know. The letters weren't signed. But they mentioned a woman who worked at a factory near Hate in the early 2000s. A woman who had a daughter. The kitchen feels too small suddenly, too warm. Why are you showing me this? James's mother's face softens. Because when I go to Hate tomorrow, I'm going to ask questions. And I wanted you to know. I wanted you to be prepared. Prepared for what? Or for answers. Or for more questions. I don't know which. Diep stares at the photograph. The woman's face is blurry, features hard to make out clearly, but something about the eyes. Can I keep this? Diep asks. Of course. James's mother stands. I'll come back after Tet, on the second day. We'll talk then. She pauses at the door. Diep, whatever I find, whatever the truth is, your family, you understand, you and I, that doesn't change. After she leaves, Diep sits at the table for a long time, holding the photograph. She hears Nai playing in the other room, hears the dog's tail thumping against the floor. Normal sounds, safe sounds, but nothing feels safe anymore. When James comes home at lunch, he finds her still sitting there. What happened? He asks immediately. Diep shows him the photograph. James goes very still. Where did you get this? Your mother brought it. Did she say? She doesn't know who it is, but she's going to ask questions when she gets to Hate, and James sits down heavily. Do you want her to? Diep looks at him, really looks at him. I don't know, she says honestly. And part of me wants to know, needs to know. But part of me is terrified. Of what? Of what it means. If this woman is my mother, if she's alive and she's been there all this time, why? Didn't she come back? Why didn't she find me? Her voice breaks. James reaches across the table and takes her hand. We don't know anything yet, he says. Maybe this has nothing to do with your mother. Maybe it's just an old photograph. Do you believe that? He doesn't answer. They sit there together, the photograph between them. Here's what strikes me about this moment. Diep could ask James's mother not to go. Could say, please, don't ask questions. Let the past stay buried, and maybe that would be easier. Maybe that would feel safer. But here's the thing about truth. Once you know it's out there, you can't unknow it. Once that door cracks open, you can't pretend you don't see the light coming through. Diep spent 20 years living with a hole in her heart. 20 years of maybe she's dead and probably she's gone, and I'll never know. And now there's a chance, just a chance, to know. Even if the knowing hurts, even if the answer isn't what she hoped. Because living with questions is its own kind of pain. And sometimes the only way to heal is to face what you've been avoiding. Diep looks at James. When your mother goes to Hate, she says quietly, I want her to ask, are you sure? No, but I need to know. That's courage, right there. Not the absence of fear, but the choice to move forward anyway. Some journeys, you don't choose, they choose you. And when they do, the bravest thing is to take the first step. Thursday morning arrives too fast and too slow at the same time. Diep's up before dawn again. She stands at the window watching the sky turn from black to gray to pale blue. So today, James's mother leaves for Hate. In the other room, Nai's still sleeping. The dog's curled up at the foot of her bed, one ear twitching in dreams. Everything looks peaceful, normal, but Diep's stomach is in knots. James comes up behind her and wraps his arms around her waist. You didn't sleep, he says. It's not a question. Neither did you. They stand there together, watching the morning come. What time does your mother leave? Diep asks. 9 o'clock. I'm going to drive her to the bus station. Diep nods against his chest. Do you want to come? He asks. She thinks about it, watching James's mother get on that bus, watching her leave to find answers that could change everything. No, Diep says. I'll stay with Niai. James kisses the top of her head. Okay. Around 8, James's mother arrives to say goodbye. She's wearing traveling clothes again. Practical, comfortable. Her bag is small. She's not planning to stay long. Nai runs to hug her. When will you be back, Grandma? After Tet, sweetheart. On the second day. That's so long. James's mother smiles. It'll go fast. You'll see. She turns to Diep. There's a question in her eyes. Are you sure you want me to do this? Diep nods once, small but certain. James's mother squeezes her hand. I'll call when I get there. Okay. Then she's gone. James driving her to the station. And Diep's left, standing in the doorway with Nai. Why is Grandma going to Hatay? Nai asks. To visit family? Can we go visit family too? Diep looks down at her daughter, 6 years old, asking innocent questions about family while having no idea that her own grandmother might still be alive somewhere. Maybe someday, Diep says. The day drags after that. Diep tries to keep busy. She takes Nai to the market. They buy supplies for Tet, candies, fruits, incense, normal things, routine things, but Diep's mind is 3 hours north in Hatay. Is James's mother there yet? Has she started asking questions? What will she find? By afternoon, Diep can't take the waiting anymore. She needs to do something with her hands. Nai, she says, let's make coconut candy. They spend the next 2 hours in the kitchen, melting sugar, stirring coconut, pouring it into molds. Nie loves this. The sweet smell, the careful stirring, the way the candy hardens into perfect little squares. Diep watches her daughter's face, concentrated and happy, and feels her chest tighten. What if everything changes? What if the truth about her mother breaks this safe little world they've built? Her phone buzzes. It's James's mother. Arrived safely, staying with my aunt tonight. We'll start asking around tomorrow. Diep stares at the message. Tomorrow. The answers might come tomorrow. She types back, thank you. Be safe. That evening, James comes home quiet. He doesn't say much during dinner, just eats and watches Diep and Nui, like he's memorizing them. After Nai goes to bed, they sit on the back step together. The night air is cool. Somewhere down the street, someone's burning incense for their ancestors. What are you thinking about? Diep asks. Everything. Nothing. James pauses. What if my mother finds her? Your mother. What if she's alive? Then I'll have to decide if I want to see her. And if you don't? Diep looks up at the stars. I don't know yet. I'm trying not to think that far ahead. That's probably smart. They sit in silence for a while. Then James says, when I was a kid, I used to think adults had everything figured out, that once you grew up, you'd know all the answers. Diep laughs quietly. I thought that too. Turns out growing up just means getting better at living with questions. Yeah. James takes her hand. Whatever happens, whatever my mother finds or doesn't find, we'll figure it out. Together. Promise? Promise. Later that night, Diep lies in bed, staring at the ceiling. She thinks about her mother, tries to remember her face clearly. But it's been so long. The edges are fuzzy now. She thinks about that photograph James's mother showed her, the woman with the careful smile. She thinks about Nai, sleeping peacefully in the next room. unaware that her whole world might shift. And here's what I keep coming back to with this story. There's this thing we do as humans. We try to control everything. We make plans. We build routines. We create safety through certainty. But life doesn't work that way. Sometimes the truth finds you whether you're ready or not. Sometimes the past catches up no matter how far you run. And when that happens, the only thing you can control is how you respond. Diep could have said no, could have told James's mother to stay home, to leave the past alone, but she didn't, because she understands something important. You can't build a real future on buried questions. The not knowing eats at you. The wondering keeps you stuck. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is say, okay, I'm ready. Show me the truth, even if it hurts. That's not giving up control. That's choosing which battles to fight. You can't control what your mother did 20 years ago. You can't control whether she's alive or dead. You can't control what James's mother will find in Hate, but you can control whether you face it or hide from it. You can control how you hold your family together when everything shakes. You can control whether fear makes your decisions or whether courage does. Diep chose courage. Now she waits. And waiting is its own kind of bravery. The next morning will bring what it brings. But tonight, she sleeps with her daughter safe in the next room and her husband beside her. And whatever truth comes tomorrow, they'll face it together. That's all any of us can do. Take it one day at a time, one truth at a time, and trust that we're stronger than we think.